On today's show we've got a man who has disowned his son, who says that the father never acted like he loved him or like any father should. But there's something else. The child was not born, it was created. Joining us first on the show is the man who brought this whole thing to light, Captain Robert Walton.
Nice to be here, Jeremy.
Nice to have you on the show, Captain. So, as I understand it, you were friends with Victor Frankenstein and sailed together on your ship, didn't you?
Well, we didn't actually serve together. It was during an expedition to the North Pole. As I was writing a letter to my sister Margaret, one of the men pointed something out in the distance, a huge hulking figure being pulled by a pack of dogs on a sled. Then one of the other men noticed Victor in the freezing waters. He seemed fine and was talking, but it took a lot of brandy to warm his limbs up.
So you saved Victor's life?
Yes, I did.
And you became friends immediately?
Oh yes. In Victor I saw someone who was so infinitely knowledgeable and hungry for answers to all the great questions life forces down our throats to be considered. In our first conversation as true friends, he told me all about his childhood, how he fell in love once and only once to his adopted sister Elizabeth, then became obsessed with how much science could change and manipulate nature.
Did anything come of the relationship with his sister?
As far as I know, she responded in the same way. Times were different then, but it would probably be better described by Victor himself.
Okay, thank you for joining us, Walton. I'll be sure to have you join us later on the show. Well, without further ado, I think it's time we met the man himself, Dr. Victor Frankenstein.
Afternoon.
So, Victor, we've heard quite a bit about you from your friend Robert, but tell me about where you studied and what.
I attended the University of Ingolstadt, studying natural philosophy and majoring in chemistry.
And what is natural philosophy?
It is the name for all types of science. When I was young, my main passion was for alchemy, where the greatest minds had the greatest hopes, finding the elixir of life, turning anything into the most precious and expensive of metals, gold. But on my first day of university, I was told that the great minds I had respected and entreated to learn everything from were now considered to be nothing but fools. They had tried to achieve the impossible and actually achieved nothing.
So you had basically just found out that all your self-acquired knowledge was useless?
Yes and no. In those pieces of information, I received both a blow to the mind about the sciences I was prepared to dedicate my academic life to, but I had also received the most thunderous shock of electricity in my brain. It was from that day onwards that I promised myself to achieve greatness. I had forced the impossible to be made not only achievable, but also forced myself to achieve it. Why discover or find out about the stars that you see, when you could instead take them in your grasp and do whatever you wanted with them?
Funny thing that you should talk about electricity.
Funny thing that you should expect me to be amused by you.
Well, okay then. We all know what you did, but we'll have more on that later. So in the meantime, why don't you just tell us how you had the idea to have your son?
He is not my son and never will be. It was during the first 2 years of uni, where I actively made myself become a recluse and consult myself in the study and application of science and every single branch stemming from its ever-growing tree. I made the discovery on how to animate death. I was now able to bring movement and temporary life to something which had been cold and lifeless only a moment before.
Oh, shut up. You're sounding like nothing but a madman posing as a scientist. For all your degrees and qualifications or creations, you can't expect people to believe that you have the ability to play God. Or if you do, why you don't prove it and tell us how you actually made your discovery.
No. And for the simple reason that if I take such a secret to my grave, then no one will ever again make the mistake that I did. I did play God, and it felt good doing it. But even God does things that he knows will turn out to be mistakes.
Sounds like you're trying to make excuses to me.
You asked me about my time in Ingolstadt, and that's what I'm to tell you about. You'll never hear another story like this, a true and original one at least. So shut up and let me answer your questions before I can be judged.
Okay, fine. Continue.
Good. The next step was to provide my discovery with structure. I had to detail man complete with all its intricately woven and melded fibres, muscles and veins. And so my work was still at present a task of inconceivable difficulty. I was tempted numerous times to cast off my arduous undertaking. But when one thinks of all the miraculous new discoveries which science makes every day, through no great effort other than simply looking in a place that no one has thought to venture into yet, I was greeted with nothing but encouragement from my mind and emotions. I decided my man, brought back from the very slab and dirt, would be gigantic in stature, 8 feet in height and proportionately large. I suppose there was something of a showman or artist in me during the height of my academic mania, which had blown over my mind like a hurricane of tempestuous desire. Life and death at this point appeared to me to be ideal bounds, which I should first break through, and pour a thick torrent of light into our dark world.
Where did you get your materials for your man?
I pursued nature to her hiding places. I collected bones from carnal houses, robbed from morgues, and scraped away the earth from those in eternal slumber within the grave. I disturbed with profane fingers the tremendous secrets of the human frame. My eyeballs at one point felt as though they were starting from their sockets and attending to the details of my employment. The dissecting rooms and the slaughterhouse were also readily available methods to acquire what I needed. My family became nothing but distant acquaintances for the time being, as many seasons caressed into each other and blurred into one celestial slipstream. I was absorbed in the cosmic obligation of my work. My obsessive pride in what I was doing mirrored the emotions that God must have felt when he first conceived of man. I was finally alive despite all my previous years of nonchalant breathing.
How did it feel the day you set about actually making your creation and giving life, if you can call it life?
I awoke from a nightmare. I dreamed that I had seen my beloved Elizabeth walking the streets of Ingolstadt. But then, as I wrapped my arms around her and gently pressed my lips to hers for the first time in months, her lips turned a thick black, and she seemed to take on the lifeless form of my dead mother.
Your mother?
Your mother?
No, I mean, how did your mother die, Victor?
She received scarlet fever from Elizabeth. Elizabeth contracted the illness first. My father and I told my mother that she was to let Elizabeth be tended to by the doctors and by the doctors alone. But eventually, with the disease persisting gratuitously, she succumbed to temptation and compulsion. Eventually, long after Elizabeth had healed due to the loving dotage of my mother's hand, my mother succumbed to the illness herself. Her dying words was that Elizabeth and I were perfect for each other, and must be there for each other forever. After the tears came the grief. It takes a few days for the mind to fully appreciate that someone whose existence was such an integral part of your own is no longer there, and never will be again. 2 weeks later I departed to Ingolstadt for my studies.
And so after you had this nightmare, you still went through with your plans?
Yes.
Well then, don't expect any amount of sympathy. The nightmare clearly didn't have that much of an effect on you.
By this point my endeavours have reached a point where they must reach their own conclusion. It was as though it had to happen, either without my forceful hand or with it.
You still remember it clearly, don't you? I even think it kind of satisfies you to know how easily you succeeded.
Easily? Oh, it was anything but easy. I had to snap bone and stretch sinew, destroy, break and take apart the essence of the physical man, and put him back together in a shape that I thought would be beautiful. I couldn't have been further from the truth.
Talk us through the moment when your idea became reality then.
It was a long dreary night in November, with all my utensils, apparatus and instruments around me. I made the final steps to spark and breathe new life into the world, life that had previously been extinguished. 1 AM, the rain trickling down in slivers against the windows, and my candle burned out to the last dying embers. And then I saw the dull yellow eye of the creature open. It breathed hard, almost violently, like a convulsion, and the motion agitated its limbs into animation.
What was your immediate reaction to what you had done?
My emotions did nothing but echo the catastrophe. With such infinite pains and cares I endeavoured to form this wretch and had succeeded. I had selected his features for him to be beautiful, but dear God, his yellow skin scarcely covered the work of muscles and arteries beneath. His hair was as long and lustrous as I had wanted it to be. His teeth were of such a pearly whiteness, but he had done nothing more than accentuate the horrid contrast of his watery yellow eyes, his shrivelled complexion and straight black lips. The accidents of life are irrevocable, much more so than the emotions of humans, which it is their nature to feel forever.
All that work for nothing then?
I'd worked so hard for nearly 2 years, turning myself into a slave for science, a recluse from my profession. I deprived myself of any and all the rest and health. My desire for success far exceeded moderation. It became addiction, the very thing that breathed life into me, and the very thing that kept me alive. Without my work I was nothing. It became the last thing I thought about before sleep, and the first thing I thought of when I woke. For me, my work offered experiences and thoughts that people only ever experience when in love. And my work was my love. But like any love, it betrayed me cruelly and mercilessly. The beauty of my dream vanished, and my dream was unveiled to be nothing but the hollow delusion it always was. A breathless horror and disgust now filled my heart to the brimful. I rushed out of the room, unable to bear witness to the very thing I had created.
What did you do next?
I remember going back to my room and pacing the dark enclosure that now seemed nothing but a savage tomb. I must have fallen asleep because I awoke with the creature in my room. He seemed to be hiding behind the curtain, and the sight of the beast startled me to great vehemence. His audible groans seemed to indicate as though he was speaking, or trying to, and the wrinkled skin which now seemed to be clawed over his face drew into a smile. My stomach churned with such wild revulsion that I wanted nothing more than to be out of the same room as him once more, so again I left in a hurry.
Well, what was the reaction of your son to you walking out on him for a second time within a few hours?
He is not my son, so stop calling him that. I have no clue as to what he felt or thought, if he is capable of thought. I went for an excessively long walk. The last thing I ever wanted was to be forced to return to my lodges at Ingolstadt University, where I would have my eyes perverted with the sight of my creation. During the walk I met my dearest and most loyal old friend from home, Clerval, who had chosen to surprise me with an unexpected visit, sweating all the while as to whether or not the creature would make his eerie presence felt immediately. But when I returned, the creature was nowhere to be found, and it remained that way for many months.
So after you see your friend in town and take him back to your lodges, how long does he stay with you?
A few months.
So what changed a few months later?
My younger brother William was murdered.
And how did you find this out?
In a letter written to me by my father.
What did you do?
I read the letter.
No, what did you do after you read the letter? How did you feel?
I felt empty, hollowed by nothing short of cruel divine intervention. My wonderful mother, taken from me through no fault of her own, other than the fact that she always had a kind heart. Her death I could look upon as her being so graceful and elegant as to lose her own life to spare that of the daughter she always wanted. But with sweet little precious William there was no earthly or justified answers to be found.
A few months. So there is quite a gap between the creature, as you call him, leaving and you finding out that your younger brother had been murdered?
Yes.
And what did you do after you received your father's letter? Write one back whilst trying to find the thing that you'd created, I hope?
No.
Oh, that's right. No, you didn't. Instead, you went home. Meanwhile, you had no clue where your creation was, what he was doing, how he felt, or even whether or not it was still alive. Did you not think about what you were doing?
What was I supposed to do, huh? Tell my dearest friend Clerval that I couldn't go home to my father, old and alone, tired and jaded, who had now lost a son as well as a wife. Meanwhile, my beloved Elizabeth cries to sleep every night with nothing but pain to console her, and all she thinks is that I don't want to be with the family because I've made a new life for myself at university. Well, both my beloved and my father think that I just didn't care about my brother's life while he was alive. So why should I care about it in death? No. I went home. I didn't care where my creature was. For all I cared, I hoped that he had died in a bitterly cold night. It's not like I could have told Clerval or anyone else what I'd done anyway. What I'd created. A monster. Something hideous. I'd rather not shame my family and have them believe I am insane. Nowadays it's completely impossible for me to see anyone that I love. All because of...
But during your travels back, you saw something, didn't you?
I don't know what I saw.
But you wrote it yourself in your journal. You were convinced that you had seen something in the woods as you passed through, getting it back to Geneva.
I know I wrote it, but I no longer believe it. I'm only half as sure as I once was.
Well, surely you can still tell all of them listening to you what you think you saw.
I was convinced for a while I had seen my brother's murderer. I thought I had seen my creation, the creature. The night in question was similar to the night of creation. Thick daggers of lightning penetrating the ground, and in the distance an object was illuminated due to the violent flashes from the sky. Its gigantic stature, its very aspect deformed, more hideous than anything that could possibly be born to humanity. More hideous than anything previously created by a human, and then I knew it was the wretch, the filthy demon whose life I had created. Nothing in human shape could have destroyed the innocently fair image of my child brother, but my demon is not in human shape. I had just witnessed my brother's murderer, and I had also realised that I had made my brother's murderer. I was just as responsible, and I knew at the moment the creature lost me in the woods and ran off over the summit of the mountain. I had created something whose only delight was in misery and carnage.
Well, you don't know that he did the thing that you accuse him of, but we can very easily find out.
No.
Well, you can't make false accusations, Victor. Ladies and gentlemen, please meet Mr. Adam Frankenstein.
Thank you for having me, Jeremy.
Nice to have you on the show. So tell me, Adam, what is it that you've come on the show to talk about? What would you like to be the ending between your relationship with Victor?
I merely want the chance to clear my name with the one who made me. I am due the opportunity to be listened to, and I deserve the chance to talk, especially when accused of murder. My creator over there would give the same courtesy to any one of his enemies. So why must it prove to be so hard for something he breathed the very life into?
Creature, be assured that I never wanted to set another sight upon you, let alone be forced to engage in conversation with you, to render my words articulate where my actions call out to be nothing but violent and vengeful.
Were you always so quick to make assumptions, Father? Be perturbed by my physical appearance, if you must, but you will be forced to remember that this appearance is the one you gave me.
Adam, please, you are a guest on my show, and as such, I want you to speak calmly. Now sit down and lower your voice.
Must you call him Adam as though this creature were actually born and named into this world? As though he were just like any other man among us?
And what name would you prefer? Victor? Father? Dr. Frankenstein? You gave yourself 3 names you are commonly referred to. So imagine how I must feel, not born, but created, man-made, developed from the greatest parts that belong to the deceased. And yet still I do not have a name. A name I was born with, a name I was christened with, a name given to me by my own father. The closest you have ever come to naming me is Creature. What name would you subscribe to me, Father?
Creature, fiend, demon, wretch, devil, thing, ogre, abomination. You are an abomination, melded and fixed by my own hands. Man hands on to nature things which should never have been created. You're nothing more than a mere child who should have either been aborted or drowned at birth.
But also a child that you didn't abort. You had every opportunity to at any point in your endeavors. But no, you continued, and my birth was a success.
In science, something can only be called a success by those who are trying to create, and in my creation, in my hunt for success, I have failed most miserably.
Do you remember the mountain, Father? Our long, weary conversation.
All I remember and all I care about was your confession.
My confession?
Yes, your confession, or do you not remember? It appears as though I did indeed make you of low intelligence. Or have you simply forgotten that you confessed to me on that cold, dark mountainside that you killed my younger brother?
So there was a confession. Adam, you really did kill his younger brother?
Yes.
Well then, you have to realise that you're nothing but a criminal. Do you really think that you're justified in doing what you've done?
Yes. And you shall not be the judge of me. Only a man thinks himself justified in making judgments on those different to him. I killed Victor's younger brother, little William, but he said himself, if I had killed half of the entire village, he would not have come. But with William I had the perfect chance to once again be reunited, to face one more time with my creator, my maker, my father.
A chance? You call killing a child taking a chance?
Not taking a chance, but seizing a chance.
I honestly don't know what to say.
His logic is flawed. There is no use in attempting to make him see the error of his ways or the consequences of his actions.
And whose fault is that, Frankenstein? You created me, and in me you have your one true great creation. But you do not like what you see. My logic is whatever you made of it. First by creation, then by desertion.
I did not desert you.
You abandoned me, turned your back on me, a mere few seconds after my birth. I remember when I was born, all of the sense flooded into being. The intensity, so much that it was painful. Sight, taste, touch, smell, and hearing all mercilessly beaten into working. But pain was the one thing I was not short of that night. I was short of a father, short of clothes, but pain and the tubes you had inserted into me for my birth, ripped from my body by my own hand, made me bleed all night. As I lay there in the shade of the forest, trying to find comfort in the very first night I ran.
What were you running from?
A father who met my first smile with nothing but despair and disgust.
And now tell him where you ran to.
I ran further into the forest. I taught myself to hunt, I taught myself to feed, and I taught myself to survive.
The man. Tell him about the man.
Ah, the blind man, De Lacy. He taught me how to read, how to talk. He described to me how each of the seasons blends so easily and flawlessly into one during the year, winter, spring, summer, and autumn. He described them to me as I witnessed all of them, and he did not judge me because he could not see my face. The blind have no concept of hideous. They do not judge, not like the children who throw stones when they see me walk past.
Tell him what you did to the old man.
I killed him, along with his son and daughter-in-law. He promised me that they would not judge me. So he trapped me within his house, and I was left defenseless. The son and his beautiful wife greeted me with disdain and panic. Immediately, assuring that I could not be a gentle and caring nature, whipping me, and all I did was scream in pain. The pain of having been betrayed yet by another man who should have been like a father to me. And so late at night, I returned, torch ablaze with fire, and then the house was ablaze with smoke. I burned them, and I cried in joy as I did it.
You are capable of nothing but murder. Destruction and death welcome you wherever you go. You are capable of nothing good, the very opposite to what I wanted you to be capable of.
Ah, but I was good, Frankenstein. No man or creation is born bad. So I tried to be good, but humanity would not allow me the chance. You spoke earlier of how I must be of low intelligence. Did I request thee, Maker, from my clay, to mould me man? Did I solicit thee from darkness to promote me?
Paradise Lost.
I have read it.
Adam.
Yes, Adam, the first man that was created and born into paradise. The very thing that I consider myself the opposite of. I am the very first man born into hell. I am no more than the Adam of your labours.
And why did you give yourself the name Adam?
Well, you would sooner have named me Satan, being the devil that you seem to think I am. I named myself Adam to remind all those around me, all those who I hear, see or feel my presence, that I was born good and pure. You marvelled at your work, your greatest creation had become on that mountain. Well, do you still marvel?
Yes, I do. I marvel at your actions, but the rate of your development does astound me. Never has there been anything like it.
And all because of you, Frankenstein. All because you created me. Another thing you asked me today was whether or not I could remember confessing what I had done to you on that mountain. Memory. The first of my memories are ones of pain, followed by abandonment, and every memory after has only served to make me realize that not one day of my life have I had lasting happiness. Do you know what that does to you?
I can only imagine.
Imagine! Ha! I remember when I used to imagine that everyone in the world could one day accept me for who I am. But such hopes and desires have since died, burned like the blind man and his family. Imagination is the seed of hope, and hope the tree that results. But one tree makes 1,000 matches, whilst one match burns 1,000 trees.
How long had you been living within that mountain?
For many months. Every day I awoke to a blue of the sky and the white of the snow. And this was my life every day, simple. I had my food provided by the wildlife of the mountain, and I was nimble enough to cascade down the mountain sides. I became a most skilled hunter, and this was my routine until you came to the mountain.
Do you remember the first thing I said to you?
Yes, I remember how you marveled at what I had become. I shall still recall your words when enough to echo my muscular coordination. Hand-eye coordination, excellent tissue, perfect balance. The very last thing you expected was the sutures of my various body parts to have held. You then remarked that even though you had failed in your endeavour to make me handsome, you have succeeded in giving me strength and grace.
Marvel I did. I just had my eyes snapped open to witness the development, the evolution of my most precious creation, precious until the very moment of realization. I mean, you talked. You actually talked in fully articulate and interesting, if not intriguing, sentences, whereas before you could only ever struggle to make an inarticulate grunt or groan as some form of communication, and all by yourself.
Yes, by myself, with no father and no help from the rest of humanity. Help was something I craved with an uncomfortable hunger, an insustainable thirst. But with the death of De Lacy and his family, those who seemed so innocently simple but yet so perfect, with their death in my hand, my own strength and unrelenting hand, came all the death of all the help I had ever wanted from humanity. All I had left to desire was your company one more time, where we would be forced to engage in the most basic of human instincts, the act of conversation. After all, isn't it that civilized, ordinary people do? Have a dialogue, albeit a dysfunctional one.
You are anything but civilized. You are at heart nothing less than a murderer, and in terms of appearance you are nothing more than a monster.
Yes, but your monster Frankenstein, whatever vengeance I chose to reap upon those who had hurt me, deserted and judged me so callously, I was a vengeance that you had brought into the world, and as such you must also share the equality of blame and the burden of the guilt.
Do you not think that I do? You morbid, ugly gargoyle, you should identify with Satan, not Adam, because you and he are naturally alike. You're both satisfied with nothing but causing destruction and inflicting unrelenting pain upon those who you meet, as though it's how you have fun. I blame myself for creating you, but I do not blame myself. I refuse to blame myself for your unjust actions.
One of the things that the old blind man told me was that some of the dreams are not good. I told him of the times when I felt strange images of my life, where I was happy and the sun continuously shined down upon me, blessing my features and making me smile. But when I mentioned that sometimes the dreams had become bad and make me angry, he told me that these kinds of dreams are called nightmares. Do you consider me to be, Father, a dream of a creation, or a nightmare which hangs over your life every single day?
You were a dream only when you were no more than an idea. In theory you should have been perfect, a man above all men who would be without malice and spite, but would have towered all over the rest, literally and morally. But you were infinitely ugly both inside and out. In practice, you revealed your true nature, one that was cold, calculating and callous, where all your actions only caused pain and misery to everyone who saw you and everything you came into contact with. You showed your true colours, and they were thick blood red, but how many people have you murdered in cold blood?
You made me. You tell me why my blood is so cold. Or maybe you can tell me whether or not you truly believe that you are better than me. You have said numerous times that you hate the fact that you created me, but do you really hate me for existing? Do you not actually hate yourself for creating me? For being the one who is truly responsible for every death or murder, as you call, which I have had the joy to commit? You are the true murderer. We are not separate. Admit it! When you see me, you see a reflection in the mirror. Underneath, your eyes equally foul and hideous. You know that you killed everyone I did. Without you, I would have no consciousness.
You didn't answer my question. How many?
You know. You say it. Bring me music to my ears.
7.
Name them. Bring a smile to my lips.
De Lacy, the daughter-in-law, the son, William, Clerval, Elizabeth, my father.
I warned you all along that this would happen.
You left me with no choice. What you wanted me to grant you was ridiculously impractical, an impossible feat for me to commit to once you had revealed how destructive your hands were meant to be.
Ah, so you do still remember the request I begged you for. When you were alone on the mountainside discussing your pathetic little brother's life, what did I ask you for?
Don't you dare mention my brother again, demon. What you asked for you did not deserve.
What did I ask for?
Something obscene.
What did I ask for?
Love.
Not his love. Not the love of my creator. I asked you to create me a woman. Someone who I could share my life with. Someone equally ugly, equally judged by humanity, somebody who would need me forever, to be their companion and to hold them as they slept, in an attempt to replace her nightmares with dreams and replace her tears with a smile, and in doing so, she would do the same for me.
You did not deserve love.
Who does not deserve love? I am a man made by a man, but a man all the same. Other humans on this earth have the right to love, yet I do not. We are similar in the notion that there is someone out there for everyone. However, I must be forced to tell myself that there can never be anyone who will look upon me with a grain amount of affection. I must dwell in the caves and clamber my mountainsides alone forever. You turned your back on me first, and then told me that I must remain alone.
I could not risk creating someone else who was just like you. You and her would have been able to travel the world, and as well as you do that, you are far superior to any man. Physically, you're able to endure the most bitter of colds and the most tempestuous of heats. You and her would have been able to pillage the entire world over if you combined your efforts.
All you wanted was to never see me again, and that was fine, until I realized that all I wanted was a female to walk by my side eternally. There was no possible reason good enough for you to find me, so William's death became necessary that I could make my demands.
You were in no position to make demands. You did not have the right.
I demand the right to be considered equal, to be given an equal chance of finding happiness and keeping it. Or would you rather I be forced to watch you and Elizabeth take your vows in matrimony from the shade of the woods?
What about Elizabeth then? Was her death necessary also? All the others that I loved who you single-handedly seized away from existence?
Because you took away the only chance I ever had to be happy. The only possibility of finding love, and I was forced to watch it happen. You consented and agreed to my demands when I was first made by you.
That was before I had the chance to actually consider what I had agreed to.
But you went as far as to start.
Yes. I had the entire blueprint from your creation firmly fixed in my mind, I had no need for the journal you threw back at me after you stole it. I followed my plans perfectly, and she was beginning to take form well. Everything was exactly the same as when I made you.
So why couldn't you finish the fucking job?
No, I will not have swearing on my show.
Shut up, or your show will need a new host.
Because the thought of what I was doing was making me sick to my stomach. I vomited physically at the stench of my work this time, whereas before I could cast it off without thought. Such was my pride in operating for the purposes of science. But this time I was confronted with the most abhorrent fatigue and revulsion of what I was doing. My sanity would have snapped if I'd gone on.
I told you all along what would happen if you denied me what was my right and privilege to have. I warned you. Whatever happened afterwards was entirely up to you. You had the chance to make both our destinies, either ones of happiness or this abyss of hatred.
And I told you that I didn't care what you wanted. I had made my mind up.
Do you remember what I said the night you destroyed my love? After I witnessed you obliterate her half-developed form, which caused me to howl the most thunderous and rapturous wail of despair and melancholia.
Yes.
I said I would see you on your wedding night, and at least I kept my promise.
Yes, you killed my beloved Elizabeth on our wedding night. We had been married for merely a few hours, and then I was a husband for a few hours, then a widower for the rest of my life, all because of you. She looked beautiful even in death, with something that you could never understand. It didn't matter that she could no longer breathe life into herself, or that the way her eyes were closed made it look as though she were having a sleep she would never wake from. She was just as beautiful as when she was alive, and I knew even then that she would be the only person to ever make me happy. The only woman I would ever want to spend every waking moment together with. And now she's gone. All because I created you. And my only consolation, the only thing that makes me happy, is that I took away the only chance you ever had of finding love. I found love and seized it. Kissed the lips of a woman who loved me undyingly, and I will have my memories of her until the day I die. You will never know for even one single second what that is like, and that is the closest thing I have to happiness now.
And I knew her death would destroy you, like I knew Clerval's death would start your destruction. I even framed you for murder. I was trying to keep you separate from everyone you knew and loved, so that they could watch you burn out in nothing, see you get sent down for the murder of your best friend, and eventually, with your screaming in your delirium of grief about being the one real killer, everyone you loved would have thought you were guilty. But I didn't expect there to be insufficient evidence. I promised to see you on your wedding day. I would have killed you. I would have assumed that the wedding would be behind the wrought iron bars of the prison, and then I would be able to strike for my vengeance. But you complicate the matter, and then I resolved with a passion to take away who you loved, instead of taking away from those who loved you.
Were you watching when I was in prison, creature?
Yes, and I enjoyed doing it, standing against the dark sheet of the night with the woodland as my shield lies completely hidden from view, but I could see you perfectly there.
And I could see you.
I know. You could see everything but the smile that was on my face.
I knew that ghastly apparition of a silhouette could be nothing but you.
I watched and laughed and laughed and laughed when your father came to visit you also.
Do you even know what that was like? To see the horrified spark in my father's eyes as he beheld his last living son rant and rave like a lunatic about being the one who caused the death of his best friend and younger brother. The pain in his eyes that I was forced to see, All the while my own sanity was diminishing greater and greater every day, bit by bit, grain by grain, just slipping away into the ether of reality.
Everything would have worked if he had only believed you, instead of calling you fatigued and delirious. The old fool, but he's still the one who you got home safely to Geneva, where I could spy upon your quaint house and observe the walks that you and Elizabeth took together, hand in hand. It was when I saw you on your first walk, I thought I first knew what I would do.
You have destroyed the lives of everyone I ever loved or cared about, and in doing so you have succeeded in gaining what you wanted. You have destroyed me. Their lives have been seized by the tight grip of your murdering, blood-stained hands, the very hands that I gave you, hands I gave you with the hope and thought of doing good for the world. It was a grave mistake when I let you have your consciousness. You worthless lech, abominable devil! I now vow nothing short of a swift and heinous vengeance I devote to you, like the miserable fiend you are, to nothing but torture and death. I will never stop following you until we are no longer sharing the same air from the same world. And if it has to be me who shall perish, then with a rapturous ecstasy and euphoria I will join my beloved Elizabeth and dearest departed friends, who even now in heaven are preparing for me a reward for the end of my tedious toil and horrible pilgrimage. But if I succeed, and you are the one who ceases to be in existence come the end of my revenge, then be rest assured, and make no mistake, your end will be one of pain. I will hurt you, and it will feel very good to inflict it.
Ha, 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 ha. There is nothing you could ever possibly do to me. After this I shall return to my lodgings at the farthest corner of the world, where the cold alone will kill you, even before I have had the chance to end your life, the way that I ended the life of all your friends. You have already spent many months looking for me, and so I gave you an open invitation to have a conversation. One last dialogue with the very same beast that you created. I am faster, stronger, more intelligent, and more vicious than you are, infinitely so. If you dare pursue me, you will come to nothing but your own end, and I will draw it out for as long as possible. I mocked you the whole course of your travels, trying to find me. I carved into the back of trees the words, "My reign is not over yet," and then I etched into a rock where you could find me. I see the everlasting ices of the north, where you will feel the misery of the cold, misery which I am impassive to. Near this place will be the single dead rabbit. Eat it and feel refreshed. Come on, my enemy, we have yet to wrestle for our lives, but I will force you to endure many more miserable and unhappy hours until we reach that point. Prepare! Your toils have only just begun. We shall soon enter upon a journey from where your sufferings will satisfy my everlasting hatred.
I have nothing left to live for. I will even give you a head start. Now back to the fresh hell you were spawned from.
I shall be waiting, Father, waiting and watching.